Russia is gathering troops on the border with Ukraine. The EU is now jointly threatening Moscow with retaliation. According to Chancellor Scholz, the Nord Stream 2 Baltic Sea pipeline should not be affected by this. So, the European Union's existing economic sanctions against Russia will be extended by a further 6 months due to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. The EU heads of state and government agreed on this at their summit in Brussels, as French President Emmanuel Macron announced on Friday night. The EU had imposed the trade and investment restrictions despite billions in losses for domestic companies in 2014 and last extended it in July to January of next year. They will now apply until the end of July next year. In addition, the EU representatives threatened Russia with retaliation in the event of an attack on Ukraine. A corresponding statement said, Russia urgently needs to defuse tensions caused by the deployment of troops on the border with Ukraine and aggressive rhetoric. Any further military aggression would have massive consequences and high costs. Sanctions coordinated with partners were cited as an example. The EU fully supports the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. One of these partners is NATO, which published a similar statement late on Thursday evening. It stated that alliance members were deeply concerned about the substantial, baseless, and unjustified Russian troop deployment on the Ukrainian border. The impact of the current situation on the security of the alliance is currently being investigated. NATO will always react decisively to a deterioration in the security environment, if necessary also by strengthening its own defense system. Chancellor Olaf Scholz and the other heads of state and government left open which sanctions could be involved. According to diplomats, sanctions against state companies and oligarchs close to President Vladimir Putin are being discussed. In addition, an operating ban for the Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline from Russia to Germany and the exclusion of Russia from the SWIFT payment system are options. The latter, in particular, could have far-reaching consequences as SWIFT processes messages and financial transactions for more than 11,000 financial institutions worldwide via secure networks. If banks are no longer able to use SWIFT, this can have fatal consequences for their business, as it will virtually exclude them from the global financial system. However, Scholz spoke out against combining the operating license for Nord Stream 2 with efforts to de-escalate the Ukraine crisis. He said, with regard to Nord Stream 2, it is a private sector project. For commissioning, compliance with European law has to be clarified in one aspect. He said, an authority in Germany decides on this quite apolitically. This is a different question than the current efforts to prevent a violation of the Ukrainian borders. Scholz described the inviolability of the borders in Europe as one of the most important foundations of peace. One will do everything to ensure that this invulnerability actually remains. To avoid war, Scholz and French President Emmanuel Macron secured support for mediation efforts at the EU summit. The statement said that diplomatic efforts are being encouraged to achieve full implementation of the 2015 Minsk Agreement, particularly in what is known as the Normandy format. Deterrence and dialogue is therefore the motto of the hour. In the so-called Normandy format, Germany and France have been trying to mediate between Ukraine and Russia for years. Recently, however, there has been little progress. Both sides accuse each other of not keeping agreements. A plan to resolve the conflict had been negotiated in the Belarusian capital Minsk. Russia annexed the Ukrainian peninsula of Crimea in 2014. It still supports separatists in eastern Ukraine to this day. The findings that Russia has concentrated tens of thousands of soldiers in areas not far from Ukraine are particularly concerning at the moment. According to information from NATO circles, it was recently between 75,000 and 100,000. NATO General Secretary Jens Stoltenberg said on the sidelines of a meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky that there were no signs that the military buildup would stop or slow down. He said the opposite is the case. It goes on. Another major topic at the summit was the sometimes dramatic corona situation, also with a view to the new Omicron variant. The top politicians again campaigned for vaccinations and looked for a common line in free travel in the EU. Countries such as Italy and Greece have already single-handedly introduced new test requirements for vaccinated travelers as well. However, Germany and France currently do not consider mandatory PCR tests within the EU to be sensible. National requirements were not assessed in the summit declaration. It simply means that restrictions should not undermine the functioning of the internal market and should not disproportionately impede freedom of movement within and into the EU. Basically, travel regulations are in the competence of the individual EU states. In view of the Omicron variant, the EU states want 180 million doses of the adopted corona vaccine from BioNTech Pfizer to be delivered. An existing contract stipulates that the companies, if desired, adapt the vaccines to new variants within 100 days, said EU Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen after the summit. According to her, the EU states are now using this option. The heads of state and government did not find a uniform course on the subject of energy prices. For hours, they discussed, among other things, the effects of the volatile prices in emissions trading on gas and electricity prices and a possible electricity market reform, as Council President Charles Michel said. Sometimes the words, my God. The subject of taxonomy, whether gas or nuclear power should be classified as environmentally friendly by the EU, was also heatedly debated. Macron stated, Germany and France want to work together to find a solution as quickly as possible. The long negotiations reminded Scholz of the coalition negotiations with the Greens and the Liberals. They were also very long, he said in the nightly press conference after the summit. However, he praised the fact that most of the questions had been constructively struggled to find solutions. In this respect, the summit was a good experience. I felt good, he said. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.